Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching Married at First Sight. Y'all wanted me to watch Chris and Paige. Y'all voted for that, so I'm going to continue watching. Let's watch.
My friendships, you know what I'm saying? Because I felt like I was missing companionship. I don't have any baggage. I don't have no kids or nothing. You know, I am going to be honest with you about my shortcomings. Tell you what my weaknesses are. My ego used to be bad, but I don't really have a big ego anymore. I try to learn.
All right, so we hear a little bit more in that direction that we saw before. Him saying that he used to have an ego, he doesn't so much anymore. And maybe he has improved, but he still seems to have at least some minor red flags of an ego. And what do we mean by an ego in a bad way? Well, narcissism is a very complicated topic. There's a lot of definitions of it. There's a lot of angles to it. And listen to my whole deep dive that is available to patrons only. When you become a patron, you get access to that whole deep dive on narcissistic personality disorder. And it's pretty complicated. And I've talked about it in a lot of other episodes as well. But on a certain level, everyone should have a little bit of narcissism, meaning that everyone should like themselves. That's what we call self-esteem. That's saying, you know what? I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty good person. I'm a likable person. I have things that are interesting to say, or I have these talents. You should have a little bit of that self-esteem. Some might call that narcissism. We also we tend to be self-centered in that we tend to see the world through our own lens. When we, like, for example, when we're driving on the road and we almost cause an accident, we later on will tell a story of, oh my God, like, I made this huge mistake and that person was in my blind spot and I couldn't see him, and but I should have signaled, and I guess I was just too stressed. So that's the way we'll narrativize typically when we make a mistake on the road. When someone else makes a mistake on the road, we will tend to say there's something wrong with them. We will not tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll say, oh, millennials are always on their phone, or, oh, boomers, or they shouldn't have license, or whatever that people say, which are awful things, ageist things that I just gave examples for. And we could think of other nasty things that people could say on the road. And we've probably all thought them. I've thought them. And then later thought, when I make a mistake, there's a reason. When other people make a mistake, it's because they are a terrible person. So that's another aspect of normal narcissism. Now, what we're talking about typically when we're talking about pathological narcissism is when people are much too self-centered and they have a really hard time understanding other people's point of view. And they're very focused, almost obsessed with making sure that they are dominant, that everyone understands how awesome they are, that other people are below them. They often are very envious of other people. And for that kind of narcissism, we call that narcissistic personality. For those individuals, typically the reason how they got there was because of early relational traumas that made them feel extremely inferior and or completely ignored emotionally. And so as a young person, maybe even an 18-month-old child, they decided that they could only depend on the self. They could not depend on other people. And they decided to believe that they were awesome, that they were the best. So essentially, a pretty good breeding ground for narcissism is a 2-year-old child, 1-year-old child who is being neglected a lot emotionally, maybe even physically as well. And the child they're dealing with a lot of difficulty. They're reaching out, they're crying, they have a lot of needs, they're not being held, they're saying, hey, people pay attention to me. And then they hit a wall at a certain point, and they think, this isn't working. So I have to figure out some other answer here. And it's done in a 2-year-old way, and it's largely subconscious. But one of the coping mechanisms available to children is to say, you know what? I'm being treated like I'm worthless, and I feel like I'm worthless. But I don't want to feel worthless. So I'm going to just invent a fantasy that not only am I not worthless, but I am superior. I am worth more than anyone else. Because I have to constantly remind myself and assert myself that I'm awesome to avoid this vast sea of emotion underneath everything saying that I am worthless. And so I need a constant narcissistic supply to supply me with distractions of superiority so that I don't have to face my massive inferiority. These individuals often don't even know who they are. They don't know their emotions very well because they were neglected so much growing up. They don't know their emotions, and they're just focused on surviving the day through a effort of narcissistic supply. They're convincing other people that they're superior, which kind of convinces themselves that they're superior, and they're trying to convince themselves that they're superior. Now, these people typically will harm a lot of people along the way because it doesn't feel good when someone's trying to assert their superiority over you and bragging all the time and trying to make you feel inferior. So I don't know if Chris suffers from this. I'll never know based on a TV show. But I just thought I'd throw that out there as a basis for watching data as we watch.
So I apologize to you. On the way down to get menus, had a panic attack, and I felt like I needed to clear myself away from everything.
All right, so that's interesting. This is the day after they got married, and he got up to go get menus for breakfast, presumably, and he had a panic attack, which I think is completely understandable. Getting married to someone at all, let alone to someone you've never met before, is a very big moment. And anxiety can occur even when you're having a good transition. I had a panic attack. I suffer from anxiety, particularly when I was younger, and I had a panic attack when I graduated with my first master's degree when I was 26 years old. Even though I was so happy to be done with my master's degree, I was very tense during my degree. I felt very much in over my head and felt like a imposter the entire time. And the fact that I finally got my degree I felt a miracle. I was so happy and I was jumping around, but I had a panic attack because there's just a lot of emotion that happens during transitions, big transitions like that. And I don't know, it touches something inside of us. I think for me, it was a lot of anxiety that had been building up that I'd been putting aside and stuffing into a box, and then it all sort of came out when I finally was able to express it. Yeah, a similar thing happens when we go into shock. Like my brother got in a motorcycle accident. Yes, he was riding a Honda, and I think he was 17, 18 years old, and pretty bad accident. He had a lot of surgeries afterwards, and he was wearing a helmet, luckily. Always wear your helmet. And he tells a story about how he was, bloody and fairly mangled, but he didn't feel any pain, and he was fine. He gets into a car. They drive him to the hospital, and he gets into the ER, and they're looking him over, and they lay him down, and the doctors leave him for a second, and that's when he had a panic attack. That's when he started to feel the pain. That's when he started to feel the anxiety, because the body feels like, I can't deal with it right now. I can only deal with it later. It's possible that for Chris, that's what happened. There's probably a lot of anxiety building up to the marriage, and then now that he's married, maybe that's a reason. Another reason why might be because he might regret having done this. I haven't shown the clips, but so there's two observations that I'll say that I didn't show the clips for because I didn't really know what to say until now, which is that he's a fairly awkward communicator. He doesn't seem to be fluid. Paige seems fairly fluid in her way of emoting and talking about things. He seems to be coming at things in kind of odd directions. Like, I hate to make this analogy, but like he's an alien who landed on this planet and has just watched television or something and is trying to communicate to fellow humans. I'm not saying he's inhuman. I'm just saying that it's that style of awkwardness. And, lots of people are awkward. Maybe he's just one of those people. It's a pretty anxious situation. He's at a wedding reception, person he's never met before, family members he's never met before. So maybe it stems from that. But I do think he has a fairly awkward presentation. The other thing that he said is that he isn't attracted to his wife, and he told her friends that at the reception. He's like, and he just said it matter-of-factly, without any kind of clarification or without any sort of remorse or something, or apology. He's like, yeah, she's not my type. I'm not really attracted to her. I don't know what to do. And that was a bit of a shocker as well. Now, on one hand, when I watched this show previously, like with Zach and Mindy, I suspected the whole time, and Zach would say this sometimes, that from minute one, Zach just wasn't into her, but had the hardest time communicating about it. He was an awkward one too. And for me, I would, because it's totally conceivable that these so-called matchmakers would make a mistake. It's hard to, and listen to my whole deep dive on scientific matchmaking. I looked into all the research. It's extremely hard, if not impossible, to predict two people that will be attracted to each other and stay in a relationship with each other over time. And these matchmakers claim they have some sort of system that doesn't exist. And what I said in the deep dive is, imagine if that existed. Imagine if we had a system that actually worked. We could eliminate all the bad dates. We could eliminate all the heartache and the divorce if we could just find two people that are compatible based on some sort of pre-test or observation. We just don't have that. Humans are too complicated, and attraction is too complicated, and relationships are too complicated. There's just too many things to account for that we can't. There's too many factors is the point. It's like trying to predict the weather a month from now. We might have a general idea, but we just don't know. There's just no way to predict things. So that are that complex as a weather system or weather is. So it doesn't surprise me that some of the cast members here are not attracted to the person that they were matched up with, and that's okay. You can't do anything about not being attracted to someone. So he's okay in my book if that's how he feels. It's just a bummer. But the way he said it was interesting. He just said it matter-of-factly. And I'm guessing y'all wanted me to watch this couple because of the kinds of things that he's presenting. So I don't know what to say about him yet. They haven't given us much data on Paige. Paige seems pretty, balanced, if you will. Hard to say, but I'll tell you, the audience, that I'm not really sure what to say about Chris yet.
Everybody, I'm still not all the way good.
So what is exactly troubling you, I guess?
So this is a good conversation, very healthy. He's vulnerable. He says, I'm having a hard time. I had a panic attack. So 2 thumbs up for vulnerability and being honest. Totally understandable. 2 thumbs up to her for saying, okay, what's troubling you? He starts to cry. 2 thumbs up for that as well. And 2 thumbs up to Paige for moving over close to him. So this is going really great. We don't usually see this kind of support and vulnerability.
So to be perfectly honest with you, I think that on paper, we are you're everything that I need, but I don't think that the attraction is fully there yet for me, to be perfectly honest.
So on one hand, like I've been saying, anyone can be attracted to or not attracted to whoever they want, and or you just can't really control those things all the time. So on one hand, he's completely justified in having his feelings, and if I were Paige, I'd want to know that up front. On the other hand, I wonder if he's giving it a chance, because oftentimes attraction, it takes a little bit of time, and they barely know each other at this point. So it seems, at least if I were his friend or his therapist, frankly, I would say, well, give it a few weeks and see if something happens. I understand you want to tell her, but what if later you are attracted to her and you harm your relationship early because you sort of jump the gun by disclosing that? Now, the other thing I'll point out is that there's a chance that this isn't actually what it is, meaning that his communication about not being attracted to her is coming from some other place, like a power play or some kind of narcissistic thing of superiority, like you're not good enough for me. I want someone that is up to my level. I don't know. I hate to speculate about that because there's really no data for that, but I just want to throw that out there because this seems a little premature. That the night of the wedding and then the next day he feels compelled to tell her, "I'm not attracted to you," when he could give it at least a few more days to see if something develops.
Last night and this morning, I am so confused. I've never been with a man who wants to have sex multiple times that didn't desire me or didn't find me attractive.
Sky opens wide, you close your eyes now.
Right, so that's interesting. I'd want to know more about that from Chris, but according to Paige, they had sex multiple times, and he has been saying since last night before they had sex that he's not attracted to her. So was he trying to spark attraction? Does he have sex with people he's not attracted to sometimes? Is it something else? I don't know.
Dad, how should it feel? This, baby.
Same.
I didn't disrespect you. I didn't disrespect you. I did not disrespect you.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand what's happening right now. I don't really understand why this is happening, but and as a therapist, I pay attention to emotions, then it usually helps. And with Chris, he's having a bit of a meltdown right now, and he's activated, it seems. He's having a lot of emotion, and I'm trying to figure out what emotion it is. The things that he's saying is that he feels disrespected, and it is not the Chicago way. He's from Chicago, apparently, and there's a code that you follow, and he is accusing Paige of breaking that code or being disrespectful to him by telling their parents that they had sex, and also telling her guy friends that they had sex, which is interesting because the reason why she is mentioning it is because he is saying he's not attracted to her. And so she is naturally going to talk with people about that. By the way, I just got married last night on a reality TV show, and he's not attracted to me even though we just had sex. So I don't know what to think. We had sex multiple times, and I don't feel very good about that. I'm guessing that's what she's saying. Or I don't feel very optimistic about our marriage. And so she told the parents, both their parents and her friends. And so he is saying, you shouldn't have done that. I didn't want to talk to my parents about our sexual life. And okay, and she's agreeable. I didn't show that clip, but she's like, okay, duly noted. We won't talk about our sex life with other people. I will point out that she didn't say everything they did. She just said, she didn't even use the word sex. She said, we had a moment, a euphemism for having sex that everyone understood. And she says, we had a moment multiple times. And she didn't talk about details or anything like that. So it wasn't like she was discussing it in detail. Anyway, so what would be going on with him right now? So if we go off of the hypothesis, which is extremely weak at this point because there's really not any data to back this up, that he might suffer from some sort of narcissistic spectrum, and meaning that he feels as though he needs narcissistic supply to distract him from deep feelings of inferiority. Well, it's possible, and this is a long shot, that when he was called out by his family of, wait, so you're not attracted to her, but you had sex with her, that would be humiliating on some level to him. Not terribly humiliating, but, a little humiliating, a little embarrassing of like, yeah, I guess I had sex, particularly with a minister father. I believe his father's a minister. And when people who are, so I don't know about Chris, but I will tell you about people that I've treated with narcissistic personality spectrum. And I say spectrum because there's the disorder, which is really the higher end of the spectrum. And then there's people that are lower than that threshold with traits. And, and there's a spectrum, right? But people on that spectrum, beyond a certain threshold, humiliation is one of the worst things they can feel because of the vast sea of inferiority that they feel, and they're covering up with narcissistic supply for their own benefit so they don't have to look at the inferiority underneath it all. When they're humiliated, particularly in a crowd of people or, in front of other people, it challenges their idea that they are superior and perfect. And then it pushes aside that narcissistic veil, and they have to look at the inferiority, the vast abyss of inferiority. And it is terrifying to the person with narcissism. It is not just an intellectual thing. It's not just like, oh, bummer, I have to face my faults. People with narcissism, when they have to face their faults, it is like a 2-year-old falling into a vast sea of terribleness. It's speculated that L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology might have suffered from narcissistic personality disorder. There seems to be some evidence of that. Hard to know because we would have to assess him. But if he did, it fits because he would have moments where he would be humiliated and would lock himself in his office. There are reports from, I believe, people close to him that he would have these periods of deep, deep depression that will last a few days. And he'd be crying and just wailing, if I remember right. And that's what can happen to people who have narcissistic personality, because underneath the constant narcissistic supply and the bragging and the signaling of superiority and thinking they're superior and better than everyone and putting other people down is the sea of inferiority. And when they're faced with it through humiliation, they can get upset. So that's one possibility. Or he just was humiliated and doesn't suffer from narcissistic personality, and he doesn't really know how to deal with it, and so he's dealing with it in this way. And then she says, you seem to be bothered by a lot of things. It seems to be a lot of things you're bothered by, and we've only been married for like 12 hours. You seem to be bothered by a lot of things. And then he gets up and walks away, which is also indicative of people with narcissistic spectrum. I don't know if he has it. I always say total speculation, but people on the narcissistic spectrum also tend to be on the avoidant attachment spectrum, meaning that they learned when attachments get gnarly in some way is to run. I don't need other people. I'm independent. Screw you. I'm moving on in life. I'm above this. I don't need this kind of stuff. And they typically will move off and will move away. Anyway, so she chased him outside, and now they're continuing to talk about that.
In your eyes.
I did not disrespect you.
In your eyes.
I should be able to come to my wife and tell her, hey, this is what's going on, no matter how good or bad.
Another useful assessment technique is to imagine what age does someone seem to be exhibiting right now. And for Paige, she seems to be exhibiting her age, an adult. But with him, he doesn't seem to be exhibiting the age of an adult. He seems to be exhibiting the age of someone that's a lot younger. I don't know that. I'd have to talk with him. But the meltdown, because an adult would say, okay, you know what? I was really upset about it. I don't know. Maybe we're just trying to get to know each other. I hear that you hear me, and thank you, but I don't know. I'm just upset. I just need to take a walk around the block. That would be an adult thing. But the way that, and let's rewind it and just imagine a 10-year-old maybe, or a 12-year-old, maybe 14, doing these behaviors and see if it makes sense. Now, this isn't a way of humiliating him and saying, oh my God, he's such a child. It's because often when we are stressed due to personality problems, we will regress to a previous time in our life. Sometimes we regress to a place where we feel more safe. You'll actually see children do this. You might see a 5-year-old that will, under stress, regress to like a 3-year-old baby talk because they feel safer in that place because they were taken care of more. Or people will regress to a place where they were traumatized. So just total hypothesis, but if he is exhibiting like a 10-year-old, 12-year-old persona, I wonder if he was humiliated a lot during those years of his life. And so as he's humiliated or he feels humiliated, he regresses back to that psychic place. But let's rewind it and watch it again.
I didn't disrespect you. I didn't disrespect you.
You keep saying that.
I did not disrespect you.
Chris, In your eyes.
I did not disrespect you.
In your eyes.
I should be able to come to my wife and tell her, hey, this is what's going on, no matter how good or bad.
Yeah, and I'll still assert that there's something awkward about the way that he talks. There's something, I don't know, scared or something, or as if he doesn't feel comfortable. I guess that's the best way to put it, is whenever he's talking to her, he doesn't ever really seem comfortable. She seems a lot more comfortable talking to him than he does with her. I didn't show the clips, but when they first met and they're at the reception and they were having a private conversation, the way he was asking questions, it just did not seem like a fluid, comfortable conversation. Now, you just met the person that you married, so that could be an awkward situation, but I don't know, there's something about the way he talks that I'm still trying to hypothesize about.
Appreciative that we don't hold back. Like, you could be eating up inside and, just goes downhill, and then we're like, wait a minute, like, I didn't know you was feeling like this for all this time.
Well, at least you don't have to worry about me. I'm gonna tell you right then and there.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as you're excited and
All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.